Elaine Johnson had always been the kind of person who noticed things others didn't. At 45, her observant eyes had seen more hardship than most in her North Philadelphia neighborhood, a once thriving community, now struggling under the weight of economic decline. 20 years as a social worker had taught her that sometimes the most important stories were hidden in silence. Everyone has a story. Elaine often told the younger volunteers at the Northside Community Center, where she spent her evenings after her day job. Your job isn't to write it for them, it's to make sure they get the chance to write it themselves. The community center occupied an old brick building that had once been a library. The paint peeled in places and the heating was temperamental at best. But Elaine had transformed into something magical, a safe haven where neighborhood kids could get homework help, a hot meal, and most importantly, a moment's respite from whatever waited for them at home. Elaine knew all about difficult homes. She'd grown up with a mother who worked 3 jobs and still barely kept food on the table. Her father had been absent since before she could remember, but her grandmother, Big Mama, as everyone called her, had been the anchor that kept Elaine from drifting. When you've been blessed with strength, Big Mama used to say, your job is to become someone else's shelter. Those words had become Elaine's North Star, guiding her through college on scholarships and loans, through the death of Big Mama, through a brief marriage that ended when her husband couldn't understand why she wasted her time on other people's problems. Through it all, Elaine kept showing up for her clients at the Department of Children and Family Services, for the kids at the center, for her community. She lived alone now in a small row house she'd inherited from Big Mama. The neighborhood had changed around her, families moved away. Businesses closed, drugs moved in, but Elaine stayed. Roots don't pull up easy, she'd say with a smile that carried just a hint of the weariness she kept carefully hidden. It was on a Tuesday in late October when Elaine first noticed a boy. The after-school program was in full swing, teenagers clustered around tables working on algebra problems. Younger kids engaged in art projects or reading circles. Amid the controlled chaos, Elaine's eyes were drawn to a still point. A small boy sitting alone in the corner, his thin frame nearly swallowed by a coat far too large for him. He wasn't doing anything, not reading, not drawing, not playing with the other children, just watching, with eyes that seemed too old for his young face. Who's that? Elaine asked Darius, one of the college students who helped run the program. New kid, Marcus, I think, started coming last week. Doesn't talk much. Elaine nodded, making a mental note to introduce herself. New faces weren't unusual at the center. Word of mouth brought kids in cycles, especially as the weather turned colder and heated indoor spaces became more attractive. She approached slowly, careful not to startle him. Mind if I sit here? She asked, gesturing to the empty chair beside him. The boy Marcus shrugged without making eye contact. I'm Miss Elaine. I help run things around here. She settled into the chair, making herself comfortable without crowding his space. Been coming here long? Another shrug. Not much of a talker. Huh? That's okay. Sometimes I talk enough for 2 people. My grandmother used to say my mouth ran on batteries. She smiled, but the boy didn't look up. Elaine noticed his hands, and small and chapped, with bitten nails and what looked like a healing burn on one thumb. The sleeves of his oversized coat were pulled down over his wrists, but not before she caught sight of what might have been bruising. 20 years of social work experience set off alarm bells in her head, but Elaine knew better than to push too hard, too fast. Children like Marcus, the ones carrying invisible weight, spooked easily. You know, she said casually, we've got some sandwiches left from lunch. Turkey and cheese. They'll just get thrown out if nobody eats them. Would be a real help if you could take one off our hands. For the first time, the boy's eyes flickered up to meet hers, dark, intelligent eyes clouded with suspicion. Then hunger won out, and he gave a tiny nod. Great, Elaine said, keeping her voice light. I'll be right back. She returned with not just a sandwich, but an apple, a carton of milk, and a chocolate chip cookie wrapped in a napkin. Placing them on the table, she was careful not to make a fuss. Take your time, she said. No rush. She pretended to organize some papers while Marcus devoured the food with the focused intensity of someone who didn't know when their next meal would come. When he finished, he carefully folded the napkin and placed it beside the empty milk carton. Thank you, he whispered. So quietly Elaine almost missed it. Anytime, she replied. That's what we're here for. Over the next 2 weeks, Elaine made it her mission to keep an eye on Marcus. He came to the center almost every day after school, always in the same oversized coat and worn sneakers. Sometimes he would accept help with homework, answering questions in monosyllables. He never talked about home or family, skillfully deflecting Elaine's gentle inquiries. But she noticed things of winces when he thought no one was looking, the way he hoarded food in his pockets, how he flinched at loud noises or sudden movements, the bruises that appeared and faded, only to be replaced by new ones. Elaine had seen enough abuse cases to recognize the signs. She started documenting her observations, making notes with dates and times. She'd made reports to Child Protective Services before and knew the frustrating limitations of an overloaded system. Without clear evidence or disclosure from Marcus himself, there wasn't much they could do beyond a home visit that might only make things worse. So she waited and watched, building trust one small kindness at a time. A new pair of gloves that someone donated, extra helpings of dinner that would just go to waste, books that she thought might interest him, left casually within reach. Slowly, Marcus began to thaw. He started waiting for her after homework time, helping to clean up without being asked. Once, when she was struggling with a heavy box of donations, he appeared silently at her side to take the other end. "Strong guy," she commented with a smile. "Thanks for the help." The ghost of a smile passed over his face, the first she'd seen, before disappearing back behind a careful mask he wore. But it was a start. It happened on a Friday in December. The center was closing early for a staff meeting, and Elaine was doing a final sweep of the rooms when she heard a sound from the storage closet, a muffled cough quickly stifled. "Hello," she called, opening the door slowly. There, wedged between boxes of craft supplies and donated clothing, was Marcus, knees pulled to his chest. "Marcus? Honey, what are you doing in here? The center's closing." His eyes were wide with fear. "Please don't make me go," he whispered. "Please." Elaine's heart constricted. She knelt down, keeping her movements slow and deliberate. "What's wrong? Did something happen?" For a long moment, he said nothing. Then, with trembling hands, he unzipped his coat and pulled up the thin T-shirt underneath. Elaine had to suppress a gasp. His torso was a map of injuries, fresh bruises layered over older ones, what looked like cigarette burns dotting his skinny ribs. "He said he'd kill me if I told," Marcus said, his voice barely audible. "But I can't go back. Not tonight. He's really mad." Fighting to keep her expression calm while rage boiled inside her, Elaine nodded. "You did the right thing showing me. Can you tell me who did this?" "Mom's boyfriend. Darnell. He gets mad when he drinks." Marcus pulled his shirt down. "Mom tries to stop him sometimes, but then he hurts her too." Elaine took a deep breath. "Marcus, I need you to be brave for just a little longer. I have to make some calls, and then we're going to get you somewhere safe. Can you trust me?" The boy studied her face, searching for something. Whatever he saw there must have reassured him, because he gave a small nod. "Okay," Elaine said. "First things first." She called her supervisor at DCFS, explaining the situation. As she feared, with the weekend approaching and caseworkers already overloaded, the earliest anyone could intervene would be Monday. Emergency placement facilities were full. The police could do a welfare check, but without visibly life-threatening injuries or immediate danger, they wouldn't remove Marcus without proper authorization. Elaine felt a familiar frustration with a system designed to protect children, but too broken to do so effectively. She made her decision. "I'm taking him home with me tonight," she told her supervisor. "Document it however you need to. I'll bring him in first thing Monday." It wasn't protocol. It could jeopardize her job. But looking at Marcus's face, the hope there so fragile it might shatter with a word, Elaine knew she couldn't send him back to that house. "Let's go, sweetie," she said, helping him to his feet. "You're coming home with me tonight." Elaine's row house was small, but meticulously kept. Family photos lined the walls of Elaine with her grandmother, with colleagues, with kids from the center at various events over the years. A bookshelf overflowed with paperbacks, and plants occupied every available windowsill. "Bathroom's upstairs if you want to clean up," she told Marcus. "I'll find you something to sleep in and make us some dinner." While Marcus showered, Elaine called her friend Teresa, a nurse at Children's Hospital. "I need a favor," she explained. "Off-the-books documentation of injuries. Child abuse case." Teresa didn't hesitate. "Bring him by tomorrow morning. I'm on at 7. After hanging up, Elaine rummaged through her closet, finding an old T-shirt that would serve as a nightgown for Marcus and fresh sheets for the guest bedroom that rarely saw visitors. When Marcus came downstairs, hair damp and wearing the oversized shirt, he looked younger and more vulnerable than ever. Elaine had made grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup comfort food from her own childhood. They ate in companionable silence until Marcus spoke. "Are you going to get in trouble for taking me?" Elaine considered the question. "Maybe a little, but sometimes doing the right thing means breaking some rules." "Why are you helping me? You don't even know me." Elaine put down her spoon. "I know enough. I know you're brave and smart. I know you deserve better than what's happening to you. And I know what it's like to feel like nobody sees you." Marcus absorbed this, then asked in a small voice, "What's going to happen to me?" "I don't know exactly," Elaine admitted, "but I promise you this, I'm going to make sure you're safe. And I'm not going to stop until you are." Later, after she'd tucked Marcus into the guest bed with extra blankets and nightlight, Elaine sat at her kitchen table with a legal pad, making notes and planning her strategy for Monday. She would need documentation, statements, character witnesses. She would need to build a case that even the most overworked judge couldn't ignore. Around midnight, she heard a cry from upstairs. She found Marcus sitting up in bed, tears streaming down his face. "I had a bad dream," he whispered. "He found me." Elaine sat on the edge of the bed. "It was just a dream. You're safe here. Can you stay?" "Just for a little while." Elaine nodded, settling against the headboard. Marcus leaned cautiously against her side. "Would you like me to tell you a story?" she asked. "My grandmother used to tell me stories when I couldn't sleep." Marcus nodded. "Once upon a time," Elaine began, "there was a boy who had to be braver than any boy should ever have to be." She told him a story about courage and perseverance, about finding light in darkness. By the time she finished, Marcus was asleep against her shoulder, his breathing deep and even. Carefully, Elaine extricated herself and tucked the blankets around him. "I see you," she whispered, "and I won't look away." Monday morning arrived with a flurry of activity. Teresa had documented Marcus's injuries on Sunday, providing medical evidence that couldn't be ignored. Elaine filed an emergency petition for protective custody, using her connections at DCFS to expedite the process. Marcus was temporarily placed in emergency foster care while the investigation proceeded a necessary step, but one that broke Elaine's heart nonetheless. The system, for all its flaws, had to follow procedures. "I'll visit every day," she promised Marcus as the social worker led him away. "This is just the beginning of the fight, not the end." True to her word, Elaine threw herself into Marcus's case with a determination that surprised even her colleagues. She gathered school records showing attendance issues and declining performance. She interviewed teachers who had noticed Marcus's withdrawal and fear. She found neighbors who had heard fighting and a convenience store owner who recalled seeing Marcus and his mother with suspicious injuries. Piece by piece, she built a case. The opposition was fierce. Darnell hired a lawyer who tried to paint Marcus as a troubled, lying child and Elaine as an interfering busybody with a white savior complex, a particularly offensive accusation that made Elaine's blood boil. "I am a black woman fighting for a black child in a system that has failed our community for generations," she told the judge during one hearing. "This isn't about saving anyone. It's about justice." The case dragged on for months. Marcus's mother, caught between fear of Darnell and love for her son, gave conflicting testimony. Elaine visited Marcus regularly, bringing books and news of the community center, trying to maintain some normality in his disrupted life. "Are you getting tired of fighting for me?" he asked once, after a particularly difficult hearing. "Not a chance," Elaine replied firmly. "When I make a promise, I keep it." The breakthrough came unexpectedly. Darnell was arrested for assaulting another woman, And with him in jail, Marcus's mother finally found the courage to tell the truth. She admitted to the abuse, to her own fear, to her failure to protect her son. In the end, the judge terminated Darnell's parental rights. He had legally adopted Marcus years earlier and granted temporary custody to Marcus's maternal aunt and uncle in Maryland, a couple Elaine had tracked down and who had immediately expressed willingness to take in their nephew. It's not perfect, Elaine told Marcus a day before he was to leave, but they're good people. They'll give you a safe home. Marcus nodded, his eyes solemn. Will I ever see you again? Of course you will. I'll visit, and you can call any time. Distance doesn't change what we mean to each other. The next day, Elaine stood on the steps of the courthouse, watching as Marcus climbed into his aunt and uncle's car. Before getting in, he ran back to Elaine and threw his arms around her waist. Thank you, he said, his voice muffled against her coat. For seeing me. Elaine held him tight, memorizing the feel of him. You go write that story of yours now, she whispered, and make it a good one. As the car pulled away, Elaine felt both victory and loss. She had won the battle for Marcus, but tomorrow there would be another child, another battle. The war against abuse and neglect never ended. Still, for now, she allowed herself to feel the triumph of one child saved, one future reclaimed. Life continued its relentless forward motion. At first, Marcus called weekly, then monthly. Letters came regularly, awkward childs, handwriting gradually maturing into a teenager's scrawl. Elaine kept every one in a box under her bed. She watched through these distant windows as Marcus grew. School awards, basketball team, honor society. His aunt and uncle provided the stable home he'd needed, and he thrived under their care. As Marcus's life expanded, Elaine's contracted in some ways. Budget cuts reduced staffing at DCFS. The community center struggled for funding. Elaine's arthritis made the cold Philadelphia winters harder to bear. She dated occasionally a kind widower from church, a fellow social worker who understood her commitment to her work but never remarried. Her life was full in other ways, rich with purpose if not material wealth. The letters from Marcus grew less frequent as he entered high school. His life was busy with normal teenage concerns, friends, sports, college applications. Elaine understood. It was healthy, this gradual separation. The bond remained, but he was building his own life, one not defined by trauma. The last letter came when he was 18, a high school graduation announcement and a short note. I couldn't have done this without you. Thank you for saving my life. After that, silence. Elaine thought of him often, wondering where life had taken him, hoping he was happy, healthy, fulfilled. But she didn't reach out. Some birds needed to fly free, untethered even by gratitude. The years passed. Elaine retired from DCFS, but continued volunteering at the center, though less frequently as her energy waned. Her hair turned fully gray, and reading required stronger glasses. Friends moved away or passed on. The neighborhood changed around her, gentrification bringing coffee shops and young professionals where family businesses and working-class families had once been. By 65, Elaine had settled into a quieter life. Her pension covered her modest needs, and she had her books, her garden, her church community. Occasionally, she would counsel young social workers, sharing wisdom earned through decades in the trenches. You won't save them all, she would tell them. But the ones you do save, they'll carry you through the ones you couldn't. She thought of Marcus when she said this, wondering if he ever thought of her. The knock came on a rainy Tuesday evening in April, nearly 20 years after Marcus had left Philadelphia. Elaine wasn't expecting anyone and approached the door cautiously, arthritis making her movements slower than they once had been. Through the peephole, she could make out a tall figure in a dark coat, face obscured by an umbrella. Probably someone collecting for charity or selling something, she thought. Still, she opened the door crack, security chain in place. Mrs. Johnson? The voice was deep, adult, but with an undercurrent of uncertainty. Yes, Elaine replied, straining to see the visitor's face in the gathering darkness. The man lowered his umbrella, revealing features that struck a chord of familiarity in Elaine's memory, but older, matured, transformed. It's Marcus, he said. Marcus Allen. I don't know if you remember me. Elaine's hand flew to her mouth. "Marcus," she whispered. "My goodness." She fumbled with the security chain, hands suddenly clumsy with emotion, and opened the door fully. "Come in," coming out of that rain. Marcus stepped inside, bringing with him the smell of rain, and something else of cologne, expensive and subtle. He was tall now, broad-shouldered in a well-tailored coat. His face had lost the roundness of childhood, but retained the intelligent eyes that had first caught Elaine's attention all those years ago. "I can't believe it's you," Elaine said, drinking in the sight of him. "Look at you all grown up." Marcus smiled an easy, confident smile so different from the cautious one she remembered. "It's been a long time." "Too long," Elaine agreed. "But come, sit down. Let me take your coat. Would you like some tea?" "Coffee." "Tea would be wonderful," Marcus said, following her into the familiar living room. He looked around, taking in the space. "It looks the same, feels the same." "Some things change, some don't," Elaine replied, putting the kettle on. Her hands trembled slightly as she arranged cups on a tray. "What brings you to Philadelphia?" "Business." Marcus settled onto the sofa. "You could say that. I finished medical school last year. I'm a pediatrician now, specializing in adolescent medicine." Pride swelled in Elaine's chest. "A doctor?" "Marcus, that's wonderful. I'm back because I've been offered a position at Children's Hospital," he continued, "and because I needed to see you." Elaine brought the tea tray in, setting it on the coffee table. "Me? Why?" Marcus took the cup she offered, his expression growing serious. "Because I never properly thanked you. Because everything I am today is because of what you did for me." "Nonsense," Elaine said, waving away his words even as emotion tightened her throat. "You did the hard work. I just helped you get a fair chance." "You did more than that," Marcus insisted. "You saw me when no one else did. You risked your job, your reputation. You fought for me when even my own mother couldn't." He set down his cup. "I've thought about you every day, about what you taught me." "And what was that?" Elaine asked softly. "That courage isn't about being fearless. It's about doing what's right even when you're terrified. That one person who truly cares can change everything." He reached into his coat pocket and withdrew an envelope. "That's why I'm here. To repay that kindness." He handed her the envelope. Inside was a brochure with architectural renderings of a modern building, along with legal documents. "The Elaine Johnson Community Health Center." Elaine read aloud, her voice catching. "What is this?" "My repayment," Marcus explained. "I've secured funding to establish a clinic in this neighborhood, free and low-cost health care for families who need it. Prevention services, mental health support, resources for children at risk." His eyes held hers. "And I want you to help me run it." Elaine stared at him, speechless. "Not full-time," he hastened to add, "just as an advisor. Your experience, your knowledge of this community, they're invaluable." "I'm an old woman," Elaine protested weakly. "You're exactly who we need," Marcus countered. "Think about it. How many more children like me could be helped if they had access to medical care, to professionals trained to recognize abuse, to a safe space?" Elaine looked down at the brochure, tracing the outline of the building with one finger. "You really want to name it after me?" "It's your legacy," Marcus said simply. "You saved one child. Now help me save thousands." Tears welled in Elaine's eyes. "I always wondered what happened to you," she admitted. "Whether it had all been worth it." Marcus reached across the table and took her hand. "Let me show you how worth it was." The ribbon-cutting ceremony for the Elaine Johnson Community Health Center took place 18 months later. Elaine stood beside Marcus, still hardly believing the transformation that had taken place in her neighborhood. The center occupied what had once been an abandoned department store, 3 stories of gleaming windows and welcoming spaces. Inside were medical examination rooms, counseling offices, a dental clinic, and a full-service pharmacy. The top floor housed educational spaces for community health workshops and support groups. A crowd had gathered for the opening: local officials, hospital administrators, community members. Marcus, dignified in a dark suit, approached the microphone. 20 years ago, he began, I was a frightened child with no hope and no future. The world had taught me that pain was my only certainty and that no one would ever see my suffering. His gaze found Elaine in the front row. And then someone did see me. One woman, with no obligation to help, but a heart that couldn't look away. Murmurs rippled through the audience as Marcus recounted his story not with shame, but with power, transforming personal pain into purpose. The cycle of abuse ends when someone is brave enough to break it, he continued. Elaine Johnson was that person for me. This center is my promise to be that person for others. He gestured for Elaine to join him as she made her way to the podium. Leaning slightly on her cane, the audience broke into applause. This woman taught me that true healing begins with being seen, Marcus said, his voice carrying across the hushed crowd. Today, we create a place where every child, every family in crisis will be seen, heard, and helped. Elaine looked out at the sea of faces, so many from her community, people she had served throughout her career. She saw staff from the old community center, former colleagues from DCFS, church members who had supported her through difficult times. I never did anything special, she said when it was her turn to speak. I just refused to look away. That's all any of us need to do. Refuse to look away from suffering. Refuse to accept that things cannot change. Refuse to believe that one person cannot make a difference. Her voice strengthened as she continued. This center isn't just about medicine. It's about healing wounds that don't show on x-rays. It's about breaking cycles of violence and neglect. It's about saying to our children, we see you, we hear you, you matter. After the ceremony, as attendees explored the facility, Marcus led Elaine to a quiet corner where a portrait had been hung, a beautiful rendering of Elaine as she had been 20 years ago, eyes kind but determined, face framed by then black hair. Beneath it was a plaque with words that made Elaine's heart catch. For those who refuse to look away, may we always see the children who need us most. Is it too much? Marcus asked, watching her face. I wanted people to know the whole story. Elaine shook her head, too moved to speak for a moment. Finally, she said, it's perfect, but you know what makes me happiest? What's that? She gestured toward the lobby, where families were already lining up to register for services. That we're not just telling a story, we're writing a new one. As they walked back toward the main area, a small boy clutching his mother's hand looked up at them with solemn eyes. Marcus knelt down to his level. Hi there, he said gently. Welcome to our center. What's your name? Jaden, the boy whispered. Well, Jaden, I'm Dr. Allen, and this is Miss Elaine. We're very glad you're here. The boy offered a shy smile, and in that moment, Elaine saw the perfect symmetry of past and present, of kindness given and kindness returned. The cycle was complete, and yet it was just beginning. Thank you for watching this incredible true story of kindness and its lasting impact. If you were moved by Elaine and Marcus's journey, please hit that like button and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories that remind us of the profound difference one person can make. Have you ever experienced an act of kindness that changed your life or been able to help someone in a meaningful way? Share your stories in the comments below. Your experience might inspire others to take action in their own communities.